Okay.
Let's go. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mid Milton Town Council Finance and Ops Committee meeting, Monday the 16th of December. We'll start with apologies for absence. We haven't received any. Public session, there's no members of the public present. Well, there is, but no question. No. So we move on to item number 3, declarations of interest. Members to declare any interest in disclose or peculiar interest they may have in general items that according to the requirements of the Milton Council's Code of Conduct, and to consider any prior request from members for dispensation according to the Localism Act 2012. Their chair.
Peculiar interest in the town trust.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and we'll move on to item number 4, to prove and sign as a correct record of the minutes of the previous meeting on the 18th of November. So does anybody have any comments? No, if not, I'll propose that we accept the minutes. Second, Sean seconding. All in favour? All in favour? That's the date is
16th in this double side.
yes, 16th of 12/24. Thank you. Right, moving on to item number 5, accounting statements. 5A, to consider approval of the bank reconciliation for November 2024 and the payments for November 2024. Does anybody have any questions regarding?
I sent the payments out separately because I realised I'd forgotten, and apologies I haven't printed it.
What's this one here as well? These ones,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah. So,
I just want to clarify the payments to Greenwood projects for M&G Countryside Developments, the £7,000 and £8,000 payment for the scrub worker. I assume we'll get that money back.
We've had the money already.
You got money already? Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
No. Okay, so I propose we accept second. That's what we did. Right.
So are we accepting the bank rec first?
Yes, we're on to bank reconciliation A.
Right.
I need somebody,
Because B and C were just.
Cheryl's done it twice, so can I have somebody else to do it, please?
Okay.
And Martin can't do it again.
It's not good enough, I think. Sean's got it.
What do you need?
It's just that it shows a variety of account.
So approve the bank statements. I'm proposing to approve the
You need to
bank
sign there,
statement. Seconder,
sign there,
Gordon seconding,
and
and we're all in favour.
sign there, and check the figures and that.
Sure, sign that.
And I've realised I did print off the bank statement, and I haven't got the bank statement. It's going away the long piece of paper. I've forgotten, I've attached the wrong. You just sign the bank statement another time, just to note to myself.
Right, do you want me to sign in here?
Yes, please.
Or we're facing the wrong way.
Oh, I'm not with it today. I do have the bank statement, it's there, it's attached to the wrong thing. So does that figure match that figure? Make it there, sign there. I'll cross that off. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Somebody said brown.
No, I haven't let on. Anyway, okay, so good. So we're on to item 5.
So the
B.
payments,
Yes, we've all, yeah, Gordon seconded and we all voted. Vegas, yes. No. 5.
Sorry, I was just writing my sentence behind. It will be on the agenda on January, but because of the internal audit, you need to now sign separate forms. So just need to think about it, that in January we need to appoint a councillor to come into the office once a month to sign the payment and the invoices, and then
Right.
clarify what's bank statement. So,
There's a verification that what we've typed up is real.
yeah, so that will be on the January agenda to appoint somebody.
Can it be any councillor? though?
Could be any councillor.
It doesn't, you just need to get one councillor once a month to come
Yeah.
in. Okay. Seems straightforward.
Okay.
So you don't need to for every certain area of expenditure? Or is that not?
No, it's just, you come in, so
No,
there's,
because the approval is given by these minutes. What they're doing is checking that there's an invoice and support stamp. Yeah, I mean we could bring, if you've got a small parish council, we can bring 6 invoices and somebody flip through them, but a larger town council, you've got a lot more transactions.
So now 5B, we come just considering the income and expenditure report for November. Does anybody want to make any comments on that? No. Next, we are looking at the budget review report for November.
I've also done a little explanation.
Yeah.
Apologies, 401A should read West Clews, not Willowbrook, but it's in under Willow.
Anybody? No? Looking around the room? No? Okay. So, that's done. Item number 5. Item number 6 is the VAT issues within the Town Hall and Council. The aim is to consider a recommendation that the Town Council appoints P-Stacks, the public sector tax experts, to guide the VAT strategy which might support the option to tax in respect to the Town Hall process. The process has been explained in the notes we've got here, that the RFOs have some information, the helpline, we've had some advice, so we need to, we've got a recommendation to appoint PS Tax to guide the VAT strategy and support the option to tax process at a cost not exceeding £1,000. That sound all right to everybody? Anybody got any
So,
questions?
Can you explain to me
Hughes.
PS tax are?
PS tax are VAT and tax.
It's a company
advisors.
called Public Sector Tax, that's what PS stands for.
Okay.
It's an independent company. They specialise in
I think I didn't know
VAT
what it
advice
was.
Okay.
to companies, but particularly parish and town councils.
They work with the SLCC, so I initially went to the SLCC and said, help, who do I go to? They pointed us, they then went to this company and then they contacted.
So, and the advice that we've taken so far in the report here, has that come from PS tax or has that come from the SLCC?
The summary of initial advice has come from PS tax.
Okay, so they've done that free of charge.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a half an hour Teams call
Consultation.
with them, with 2 of them, and admittedly, honestly, a lot of it went over my head, but I think I'm getting the gist of it. And they did say, we've thrown a 2-day training course at you in half an hour.
Fair enough. So, I mean, looking at the 2 recommendations, obviously the first one seemed very sensible to appoint them to guide us through our VAT strategy. The second one to formally adopt, I can understand what they're saying about adopting, opt to tax the town hall to protect the VAT recovery. Is that something that you want to agree now, or have they got further work to do?
No, I think my understanding, it's just the one, item number 7 on the first page there. That's maybe there.
Is to appoint PS tax, and then if you appoint PS tax in January, there'll be another proposal to do the opt-out.
Okay, so what I'm looking at here has got 2 recommendations on it.
That's their initial report back to us.
Oh, okay, that's not what you're proposing tonight.
No, it's just to appoint them.
Okay.
The likelihood is they'll come out with a recommendation at the bottom, but they do need to run through some
That's fine.
due diligence checks to make sure that their initial thoughts are correct. So they'll give you a far more detailed report. So their initial thought is you'll probably need to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're going to ask us for some information to support bits and pieces, and they'll refer to legislation in quite some detail.
Okay.
Yeah. So after the half an hour phone call, that's what they think. Okay, but they wouldn't give that as a definitive advice until they've done some sort of more diligent checks on understanding. Because what Kate told them with the phone, they're going to say, "Well, show me that," and show me how to produce that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just a check of understanding that what they've been told initially over the phone call exists, and that's where they likely end up.
Okay, because there was quite a lot of unknowns or uncertainties just in the information we've got so far about the plans for the town hall and exactly where we are. And
Well,
the understanding of the
well,
ownership of the hall and the future ownership of the hall, so that wasn't really defined.
No,
So that will have to be defined. I guess, at some point.
this will be confirmed, obviously, but the information they gave me was, at the moment, we are doing all right, because we're claiming, the town council are claiming the VAT back on the refurbishment.
Right.
But at the moment, we are fine with that, but they do recommend to opt out to tax, so we don't have to pay the VAT, so we've done it. It lasts for 20 years. They said if we then transfer it to the town trust, if the building goes to the town trust, we cannot reclaim. The town trust would then have to project manage it, take control. The town council cannot claim the VAT back.
Let them come back with the detailed advice.
It's more complicated, isn't it? I mean, as far as I can tell, the
And if,
the
I'm
councils
sorry,
are,
and if we take, if we lease it to the community trust, we would not need to charge them VAT.
So again, that's almost right. That's in the right ballpark. There's a lot more detail to that. There's a lot of issues. One of the things the council will have to take into account is the 2 sides to opting in for tax. Effectively, there's 2 sides to that. About the future use of the building. Councils are allowed that exemption on building projects, but then it limits what the building can be used for. That's the biggest thing. And certainly prohibits commercial use and other things like that. So yeah, I think if they're going to produce a full report, and maybe even really good to send someone to explain more to us, because it seems like quite a big decision. Or maybe-
It's not that big a decision. I mean, I've come across it before.
Right. Okay.
Okay, it's not that big a decision. Yeah.
If we don't opt out, there's a high possibility you need to pay back the VAT of 270,000.
Again, that's
Yeah, no,
partly conjecture, and that's partly
Exactly, I'm just saying
Yeah.
this is all conjecture. The
Yeah, we don't have-
recommendation is to appoint them.
yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to propose a recommendation,
Yeah.
because speculation is not going to help,
Yeah.
is it, at the
See what the
moment?
situation is. Like,
But they're going with a fairly neutral view to give us the best advice.
Yes,
So
yeah,
that's-
yeah,
that's-
And then hopefully, I know it's short notice, but hopefully in January we can do the opt out, because February is cutting it quite close.
yeah.
Well, again,
see
you
the
don't want
advice.
to prejudge that.
Yeah.
What I think will be interesting for the council, and maybe with the questions, I'd like to know how the council has treated other capital projects in the past, and whether it has paid VAT or reclaimed VAT. We have completed some large capital projects. The biggest one I can think of recent days is the Mugger, which was £60,000. It was only completed a few years ago, and I don't know whether we...
Yeah, so basically VAT, the town council can claim VAT back on business activity.
Yeah.
So if you order photocopying paper, yeah, we can do that.
Mhm.
Okay, but there are some things that have sort of duality of purpose. So you had a town hall, and in it, half of it, you had the office, the staff, okay, and half of it you rented out for dance classes, yeah, and then the roof needs to be done, and that's £100,000, okay. Only 50% of the roof would be to cover the business activity. 50% would be commercial activity, wouldn't it? The leasing of it, it's some income. The councils can claim back non-business activity up to £35,000, so you get £7,500 VAT. Okay, so a Mugger, there's no commercial activity with that. That's just something you do. Yeah. Now, if you were charging people to play on it, it would be different. Then the Opta tax, but you're allowed to do £35,000 a year, and they call it a trivial amount actually,
Yeah.
in the legislation I think, because lots of councils have shared spaces with, dance clubs and bowls clubs, etc. Well, service centre type thing, yeah. So as long as you're not claiming back more than £7,500 VAT, so £35,000 in a year on all your assets, okay, you can claim that £7,500 of non-business activity.
Yeah.
So that's so. I mean, I've done building projects before. I've done over 2 financial years. Yeah, so 30,000 in March and 30,000 in April, and split over 2 financial years. Okay, so that's when you would get somebody in to give you that advice. So yeah, the mugger one would probably, off the top of my head, would be no problem because that's just a business activity. Yeah, you're not generating the income from it.
Repaying the VAT.
Yeah. Whereas if you have the town hall, for instance, and then you get a wedding license, the whole wedding's in there, you're adding value to that venue. So if you charge somebody £100 to rent it, okay, you should go up to 120, give that man £20 for that back.
Yeah.
That's basically it's about the thresholds. So with a town this size, okay, you've got lots of properties.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about the town hall roof's a good one, £100,000 drop, that breaks the £35,000 threshold. If you split it in 2, and what lots of councils do, they'll hire somebody in to do an assessment of all your spends on your capital bits and pieces, where there's sort of duality of purpose, and see, well, okay, the staff are in there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 10,000 hours a year, okay, you all hire it for 2,000, therefore it's only a small percentage.
Right.
That's the general. Do you understand? Yeah.
But then none of that would matter if it opted into tax effectively, because then it would be allowed to then charge tax.
No, so if you opt to tax.
Yeah, opt to tax, sorry.
Yeah. So what you do then is, if you do rent the building out, you're charged with VAT and passing that to the VAT on all that building.
All activities.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, like for instance, the town council to rent a room in, say, the hall, that room would have that added onto the rent. Sorry for asking.
Not quite so simple as that, but not a million miles off.
Fair. And another thing I want to add to that as well is, Kate alluded to a little bit, that there's a few unknowns. And one thing that was mentioned, and Kate stated that if the town hall, for instance, were to be transferred to the town trust, it wouldn't be eligible for any VAT recognition. So that is obviously quite an important thing to say, and we need clarification on what the council is going to choose to do and what the implications are, and whether that's...
and this will come back to us.
So,
Cool.
All good
advice.
Apart from that, 100%.
Okay.
Happy to second what Cheryl proposed.
Okay. So Cheryl's proposed, Gordon second.
I've already written down as
All
well.
in favour? We've voted now, Okay, good. So item number 7, to consider the budget review, receive, review and updated report, consider draft
So I
budget.
apologise, I didn't send out a report because it was the same.
So what we've got here is the extra requests from the Carnival and the Community Trust and Town Trust have been added to this, but having spoken to the clerk, there is still, we would rather defer this until the next meeting. We have got till February to make a decision, a final decision on the budget, as we said last meeting at Town Council. So we've got January's F&O meeting to discuss and put the final recommendations. The majority of the proposed budget for next year is as it's been over the last few months, and we've gone to several meetings. We've not changed any of that. The only things that have changed is putting those extra amounts of grant funding. And until the clerks are suggesting that we can have a bit more clarification and certainty over general reserve and the sort of money we've got, if we leave it to another month and decide then. So we're not...
So tonight you haven't got the council tax base. We don't know what the council tax base is, do we?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, Chair.
Yeah, I just really wanted to ask a question, Chair, because at the last meeting we actually had quite an extensive Q&A on the entries in the spreadsheet. And I mean, I know that the 3 grant amounts have been changed, but have there been any amendments to the other figures based upon the points that were raised at the last finance meeting, because we talked about the pension deficit,
Yes.
we talked about the interest to be added, we talked about potentially putting in something in terms of SIL, so that then the 10,000 that was in there could be allocated off against SIL. So without a report, it's difficult to know what other things have been changed in response to all the comments that we made last meeting.
So all the salaries, pension deficit, that's all been changed and double checked. We've put 4,000 in for the interest received. It may be more because I'm going to put the precept directly into the CCLA for next year and then transfer it to Unity. SIL, we were going to find out about SIL. I don't know what happened about SIL.
I mean, you can put a budget figure in.
I just feel that if we've got a capital project going on, which is not the £10,000 reference neighbourhood development plan, which is in at 12.5, there was £10,000 put in for something else, isn't there?
Playground.
For the playground.
Yeah.
That we should be looking to offset that against SIL money as opposed to taking it out of the precept, and that was the point I made at the last meeting.
Yeah, there's sort of two elements, isn't there? There's the budget, how much you intend to spend, and there is how you're going to fund it. So you can fund it with the precept, or you can fund it through earmark reserves as well. So we've just got £33,000 in earmark reserves, SIL money in October, didn't we, Kate? Okay. So if your budget was £130,000, for instance, you could say, let's fund that £130,000 with £100,000 precept and £30,000 of earmark reserve. So the budget doesn't change, it's how you fund it. So, I mean, we do have that money because that came in October, which you haven't got here, it's gone straight to earmark reserve, and there's still money goes into earmark reserve, so you can identify where it's spent. So there's no reason why, if it was £130,000, you couldn't precept £100,000 because you use that £30,000.
Yeah.
You could choose to do that. Yeah. Okay. Or if your general reserve was at 2 million and huge, you could say, well, actually, we'll only charge the public 50,000 this year, and we use £50,000 below the general reserve. We're not in that state. Okay. So the budget and how you fund it are two slightly different things.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I think it's generally poor practice to try and buy specific things with precept money, because it means your precept's going to vary wildly from year to year depending on you should use your earmarked reserves and your general reserve to even that out, because otherwise every single budget would be, well, every time you want to do a project you have to add it specifically onto the precept when you take it off the next year. So I think you're right about that. I think a lot of the budget items here could be a bit more generic. They don't have to be quite so specific. So when you're talking about little bits of grant money, you can just go into a pot for that kind of service.
You mentioned that we got SIL income of 32,000 in October.
Yeah.
Has that been notified to the council? Has it shown up on the accounts?
It's in the income and expenditure.
It's in the income and expenditure.
Yeah, I think it was probably. I've certainly
It was
mentioned it at a meeting here previously.
I know it's been mentioned. I just
Yeah.
wondered whether,
Yeah.
because you do have to do a SIL statement at the end of the year as well.
Yeah, to say what it
It's
is.
a record, so you could actually choose to put it on the council agenda with the reference number and say this and that SIL has come in and whatever. But anyway,
Do we have a breakdown of that SIL?
that's what I mean.
Apart from what's developments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult to put SIL into the new budget when we haven't really got any inkling of how much it could be or what developments are going to generate it. I'm reluctant to put money in that's guesswork. I know if we're going to put a number in, I appreciate there's going to be an element of guesswork about it. But I'm just looking for something tangible that we can hang that number on, whether it's...
We've averaged 30,000 a year every year.
We don't know if that's because all developments are finally completed or we've got another 10,000 hours.
Yeah,
and we're going to
so
get 5 years.
if there's any way we could actually just interrogate these numbers a little bit more and have a confidence level that it could repeat again at a similar level, would that make sense?
Yeah, you can ask, are there still contributions they anticipate from existing or very recent developments?
Yeah.
Because it's not all given straight away, is it?
No.
I've just pulled up the report, and most of this, for this year, has been from Silver Street.
Yeah. I mean, there
The
will be,
exam question is all the money come from Silver Street, so we don't have to spend any more, or is it?
yeah, and Silver Street's done now. I mean, there'd be no more money coming in from Silver Street, and there isn't another Silver Street in the pipeline that's going to happen in the next year. So it's just having that, just a level of confidence, that's all we're looking for.
Cool.
Is the council making any provision for maintenance and repair of the Sun Centre? In the budget?
Not currently.
Knowing that there has been a detailed survey, there is roughly £20,000 worth of what the surveyor says is fairly urgent work, and my further deterioration is not addressed. So is the council aware of it, and has it got?
But that's up to the trust to apply for the council for a grant for, isn't it?
No, it's not.
But
The
it's
council,
the Sun Centre, it belongs to the trust.
Not necessarily. The council.
Sorry, sorry, I'm asking the.
Sorry,
well, I was speaking.
Yeah, well,
Let's see.
question.
Yeah, sorry, so the community trust asked for a grant funding, didn't they? Okay.
No,
And in that grant funding,
Talking about the town
the
trust.
town trust.
sorry, what did I say? Sorry, the town trust.
Yeah.
Sorry. The town trust asked us for an extra 10,000?
Extra 10,000.
10,000, okay, and in that justification they mentioned a building survey.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Councillor Taylor suggested that she would be minded to underwrite some of that, understand how that, is it all required to be done tomorrow or in the next financial year, or is it £2,000 or £3,000 immediately, £5,000 next year, and then some priority 3 or 4 works over a few years? So you might not have to give the whole grant, but there was a suggestion that the council, as a sole trustee, should fund that, and that probably gives some certainty about the lease the town trust then can have with the community trust about whether it's a full repairing lease. Yeah. So it's quite tricky because a lot of people are dual or triple hatted.
I think I leave at this point.
We're not making
We're not making a decision. So.
It's something that I would think, I mean, the council as trustee, so charity trustee, whatever you want to call it, of the Sun Centre building, has a duty of care to the building, clearly. Otherwise it would give up its trusteeship, which
Yes.
it could do at any point.
Yeah.
So while it remains the sole trustee, and it has what effectively is a liability at the moment, because we know that as a quantity surveyor, I think the council should be looking through this budget to have some money in a capital project EMR type thing, so if repairs are necessary, the council can make them, which it would expect to do, I think, as prudent.
Can I say that?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to look at the whole funding model before we make a decision, because I mean, we're paying £10,800 rents to be in that building. That money is going to the community trust. The community trust aren't putting any of that money back into the town trust towards the costs of the maintenance or repair.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
Well, that's what I can only go with the figures that have been divided by the 2 trusts, Gordon. And within those figures and the models that they've demonstrated that they are working on at the moment, there is no money transferring back through to the trust, for the community trust, but the income they're receiving in rents on the buildings, they're not passing any of that back into the trust for the maintenance and repair.
But the agreement hasn't been in place long enough for that to happen, but I would expect that when money comes in from the council to the community trust, whatever, the community trust will start having to pay.
You expect, or is there a written agreement?
Well, the thing is, we've got this issue because there's not quite a written agreement yet, which is a priority to get sorted for everybody. But we'd expect, I mean, the town trust isn't exactly going to be out there trying to make money for itself. What it's going to be trying to do is get some income to try and maintain the building going forward. And the trust has got a few properties.
Yes, by rental income.
Yeah, exactly.
But the rental income is going to the community trust.
But at the moment, the town trust isn't charging the rent to the community trust. But it will.
Then it needs to start then.
If
it has problems with the building, then obviously it needs to look at its income, its rental income for the properties that it owns.
Yeah.
And it's giving them away, it's gifting those away to the community trust. So it needs to start charging the community trust a proper amount so they can maintain their own buildings.
Of course it will do. Of course it will do. But in the short term, there's still going to be
Well, in the short term,
In the short term, there's still going to be extra capital work that the Somerset are going to require, and that's where the council as sole trustee would expect to have a duty of care to that building. I mean, that's what councils do. They look after their
But
properties.
I think we're right that we need that agreement. Such as
Well,
soon as
that's
possible,
that's
don't we?
going forward as an
Well,
ongoing maintenance thing, but I think the council wants to be prudent and have enough money to make sure that that building can be looked after and doesn't become a liability. Because otherwise,
Yeah, so there are probably a couple of ways. So the difficulty you've got is the agreements, haven't been formalised. It's not a lease. Okay. So what you might expect to happen, okay, is that the community, the town trust, charge the community trust a reasonable rent for that property. Okay. And the value of that rent might depend on the condition of the building. So if I was to give you a 3-bedroom house and say you've got to decorate it, put the carpets in and put the curtains in, okay, I'm going to give you for £100, but fully furnished it's 150. Yeah? So there's...
Yeah, but Lee, I understand all that, but let's see an agreement. Let's see the agreements and see what the terms of each of the agreements are and who's responsible for what, who's responsible for the maintenance, and then once we've got that model in place and we can see the agreements between the 3 parties, then we can understand who's going to pay for what and how and when.
Again, but at the moment that isn't the case. We've got 6-8 weeks to sort your budget and precept out.
Yeah.
Okay. If you budget for something, it doesn't necessarily mean you spend it.
No, but but if we're going to budget for it, then we need to look at how it's being identified in the budgets.
Yeah.
At the moment, we've got the town trust wanting 25. We've got the community trust wanting 26,000. Gordon's asking us to put extra provision into the budget to do maintenance on the building on top of these increases to these figures, which still haven't been properly justified in the applications from the 2 trusts. So we're looking at huge increases without really having a model we can base it on and actually some.
So that town trust money is within for the building is within the town trust grant on that line there. Is that 10,000 added?
Well, no, that's not what the application said, is it? There was 3,000 in there for tree work.
There was 3,000 in there for tree work. They gave us a list: 3,000 for tree work, 20,000 for the roof, 15,000 for something else for the salary. This is all off the top of my head, but they then said they had enough money and they only were looking for an increase of another 10,000.
Yeah.
For 25,000.
But we need to, as I say, you can't look at it in isolation. You've got where is that £10,800 rent that we're providing going? Because there is no agreements in place. So that's going into community trust to be spent on what? A party? I don't know. Where's that 10,000 go? When we've got a problem with a hole in the roof and we're spending money on parties, let's try and get some context to what we're doing with our money here.
I don't know how long that agreement's been in place between the town council and the community trust. It certainly hasn't. The council hasn't paid £10,000 up front.
No, it's only we're only in there 2 weeks.
Exactly. So there is no magic £10,000. There might be at the end of the year. That agreement has unfortunately shot the gun a little bit, but we'll get it sorted out ASAP, and it's just because of the way it's worked out. The community trust have taken over the building without a formal agreement in place, and we all have to work hard to get it in place. The thing is, when it comes to the capital maintenance, or the maintenance
Since April.
That's true.
But I mean, I'm sorry, but it's December. We've had.
Well, I think the thing is,
I don't think we can charge anyone in the building yet. Have they? No one in the building has actually been invoiced since April.
Well, the town trust used to invoice the community association. I think the thing is, because we were also worried about any disruption to service for all the community groups, the main priority for everybody concerned was to make sure all the user groups in the summer centre were not affected, and they've not been. So that's the main thing. Now we have to sort out a few things to make sure all the legal stuff's sorted. But the point is that, okay, rather than the town trust, which we're the trustee, council's the trustee, rather than it necessarily having to come for a grant, which has all the issues with it, that may not be the way the council decides to go. It might decide that the town trust does not need such a big grant, and capital works, to something like the summer centre, can be undertaken by the council as it sees fit as trustee. And that means the council isn't handing over money in grants. So by making provision in the budget, that can be decided later. But we do know, because there's been a quantity surveyors report, whatever, that there is issues with buildings that need to be addressed.
Okay. So, I mean, okay, so there's two separate issues. One is I'm happy that we put a provision in a budget, and if you want to put it into, if you want to ring fence it, but I'm not happy that we agreed to these.
Yeah, that's a very important, subtle but important view. Okay, points. Okay, so this is about a budget. It gives you the ability to spend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean do. What I think we were trying to this year was get some very detailed grant applications, whereby we could at budget say we're happy with that. Whilst we budgeted, we also approved the expenditure. I don't think we're there yet. Okay, so I think that was the intention of the start the budget process, which is what you were moaning about. Sorry, you were making a point about was, it would be handy if when we set the budget, that we agree the grant application, but I'm not sure we're in a position where we can agree the grant. So we can budget, and you might want to budget some round figures. You could just, there might be some things you want to commit to with those, okay? And then you might say, well, actually, there's some other bits we're not too sure about. Let's just ring fence 10, 15, 20,000 pounds between a number of things that we'll just call contingency, and then we might consider at a later stage once we get the information if you think it's a good idea. So you don't so budgeting isn't committing.
Yeah, but I think the issue is, and I'm not going to use the town trust as an example because otherwise I'll have to leave the room. If we said, for instance, that we put into the budget the extra 2,000 the Carnival Committee wanted. Oh, but by the way, we're going to actually ring fence an extra 10,000 in the budget. You actually can't make the decision, and I think that's the point Lee's making. You can't make the decision to give that amount as a grant, and then also on top ring fence money. So if you're going to say, as Gordon has said, the town council should make provision for spending on the summer centre, then that should be not in addition to anything else connected with the way it might be looking in terms of organisation. So not an extra 10 grand on top of everything else.
So you need to break down the figures.
I don't think this really helps.
So we need to break these figures and break down those figures that have been applied for by the trusts and separate them. And allocate them
as extra. Extra is
separately. So I was sort of under the impression that there was sort of general consensus in the council that giving roughly that which it gave last year was tolerable. I'm not saying it was pretty good. So if you put in the budget those same figures as last year for the individual bits, okay, and then you have a contingency line, okay, to allow you to do whatsoever you wish, which might be to do some works on the town. It might be to do some bits and pieces on the NDP extra. It might be to buy a new van. It might be something comes out of the visioning events.
At the moment, we've got 130,000 in that community support section.
Wasn't our suggestion last time to actually do that, to say that the over and above amounts that were being requested in grant format appear as a separate line item, so that then we could actually see what those extra amounts look like as a separate line item and how that will impact on the budget. Whereas what that actually has been done is that they've been upped within each individual entry. So, and that then makes it far more difficult because
it looks like it's aligned specifically to those items.
And because, as was originally pointed out, the whole point of considering the amounts for some of these applications from Carnival and so on was that rather than just put a budget figure in, they had submitted all the due diligence. The council was actually at the same time approving a process for expenditure of that amount that they were going to also put in the budget, which is how a lot of other councils do it for these big grants and things for organisations. I mean, we used to approve the application by the Cambridge Music Festival at this time of year, and they would submit all their accounts for last year and everything, and then they would say, we would like you to put this amount in the budget, and therefore we also want the authority to spend it. And so we do it all as one thing. And that was the idea for this time round with the trusts.
But we haven't got it.
But, I mean, in terms of timescale, I mean, obviously we need to allocate the budget, but we can't actually really start releasing funds until we've completed the review that we've already agreed we will do into the trusts.
Partly, yeah.
Well, we've got an internal audit that tells us we've...
But we're not going to
We've agreed recommendations and adopted recommendations, one of which is that we're going to do it. So we've got two separate routes that are both telling us, before you do anything, you need to complete your reviews on these two trusts and understand the benefits and how you finance and what you do. So that review has to... So I'm quite happy that we budget it, and I think it's sensible that we've split those trust grant applications into sectors rather than lump sums of 25 or 26. But we do, in parallel, we need to kick off this review into
And one step is the VAT bit was in the town hall. That will answer a lot of those questions. So
well, I think we need to look in detail what the internal audit report and the recommendation on auditing and independent report says we should be doing, what we've agreed we'll do. Because one of them actually talks about looking at potential of dissolving a trust. There's all sorts of things within those recommendations. And it's not saying we should, it's saying that we should explore the relationship between the trusts and the town council and make sure that we've got, make sure that we're compliant with the charity commission. I'm just trying to finish a sentence. So we also have to make sure that we're compliant. There's a full... I'm not. That's fine. Let him carry on.
Well, I think
I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous.
Gordon, can you stop? You're talking
you want
now.
the opportunity to speak, and we let you speak. Let me. Do these a courtesy and allow me to finish my sentence as well.
Gordon, can you stop talking, please?
Okay.
I'll tell Sean when to stop talking, and then you can talk. I saw your hand go up, but you need to talk over Sean. He was making a point, and I was letting him continue.
I apologise.
And it was pertinent to the discussion. We need to that work on defining what the role of the trusts are needs to be working, and it started. No, it's not an agenda, but it's pertinent to the deciding about what we can spend and how we spend it. But I think what's coming out is that we've got recommendations to separate that money out on the.
So what we'll do with the budget is the extra bits they've asked for. We'll put another line in and say extra bits. Contingency. And we'll round it to a figure. Maybe below that they're asking.
I mean, you could even look. I mean, if the money extra money that's being asked for the town trust, I'm not even sure that it falls into does it even fall into the community supports sector? If it's building maintenance.
Well, what it was, it's difficult.
I don't know the answer. I'm asking.
I don't think it's inappropriate. It might be better to list it out because the difference you have with the town trust is the town council is the sole trustee. So you could meet separately as a full council, and discuss all the aspects. But what you choose to do, which most councils do, choose to have a management committee to keep it ticking over and then report back to you. So if that management committee stops to exist, we'll be talking about it here, and that liability will probably lie with the council. So it will come back here. So it's a slightly different thing.
Well, I mean, I think you've got enough of a steer from us as to how perhaps you might want to
present
the.
But the thing is, what I would say is the numbers are still the same. The numbers are still the same.
Well, I was going to say that the numbers may need to be slightly higher because we know that in some sense it does require quite a bit of work, as we've seen in the survey. And the thing I want to say really is the fact is I don't see any reason why to go to grant the council, and there's kind of with the actual cost heading for it, but councils are well within their right to maintain community buildings. And there's a separate budget for that councils can use. It doesn't have to be done as a grant. And if anything, I'd say things like the town trust shouldn't be getting large grants to maintain buildings. That's probably out with the remit. They're there for the day-to-day management. And if there are large capital improvements to be made or maintenance, the council should probably consider doing that, even if it delegates the work to the management committee.
Okay, we do need to consider VAT implications based on
Yes.
Okay, so it's not.
That's fine.
Yeah. So if
I'd just like to suggest that I don't think now is the time to start changing the whole way that we are under the impression things are going to be organised between the trusts at this moment in time. What we can do is we can set a budget based upon the information that we have. We need to wait in terms of the VAT because that may influence how that money is then redistributed going forwards. But the point is that we've already gone through this budget several times, okay? As has been said, the figures remain the same apart from a few tweaks based upon what we said last time, and that we've decided that we're going to take out those extra 3 bits, which was where the big amount of extra expenditure was going to sit into a separate line item. So I really don't feel, Chair, that we should be carrying on and discussing hypothetical ways that the trusts can work together or anything. There's money in there. I know that Gordon is making a point to say he thinks that there should be additional money in there on top of everything else. And I'm saying, I'm really sorry, but we've had several different goes at this budget and it's never been raised before. And I think we just have to, we have to consider that we have to cut our cloth according to what we can do. If there is a case where there is emergency expenditure needed at a time going forwards in council, then an application can be made for that expenditure through the finance of the town council, if it's needed. But at the moment, I can't believe it's taken us so long and we haven't even got to a situation where we've got a final figure to recommend to council for the budget. Do you know what I mean? It's just...
well, the final thing you've got for the budget is, you've got it on here, Kate, haven't you, now, total area?
This one, total
607.
607, 907.
Right, and so what's the impact of that in terms of what we talked about before, in terms of level of reserves and things like that? Because obviously...
Well, that's why we were just discussing this, not making a decision, because we're requiring further certainty about the...
We need a council tax base to be confirmed, which will affect it.
But yeah, but we know that the council tax base comes out late. We should still be able to understand what the 607, 907 means in terms of the reserves that would be in the general reserves. And that's the first point. We don't need to. We should be setting a budget before we set the precept. That's what JPAG says.
At the moment, on our figures, you have projected, this is purely projected, you will have about 3 or 4 months general reserves projected at the moment. What comes in over the next 3 months? We don't know.
What was it we specified? Did we specify 6 months? 6 months.
Not between
The
3 and 6.
the JPEG, or the Practitioner's Guide, or the joint, I can't remember the whole thing, I call it the JPEG or Practitioner's Guide, is a huge paperwork. Cheryl will know what it is in there. In there it states that large councils with over 200,000 is recommended to keep 3 months, but it's not written in law. It's up to councils. So keep 3 months general reserve. Smaller councils, they say 3 to 12 months.
But we previously said that 6 months is our target.
Yeah.
That's so.
But at the moment,
yeah, 6
But
months
that's
is our
what
target.
we decided. Are we now being asked to change that recommendation
So
made
the-
previously?
so this budget doesn't include extra reserve.
So,
You'd need another, this is off the top of my head, 90,000 to put into general reserves. So if I just put that in now,
could you give me a percentage number on that 607? What is that? Is that an 8% increase? Is that?
if I put 80,000 into general reserves, it brings it up to 687, 907, which is an increase of 23%.
Okay. So this is 8.8% at the moment, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That 80,000 is just a figure.
But we'd agreed
Yeah.
with just under 4%, just under 5% previously.
I mean,
So this kind of confuses things. So you know, which was a
I mean,
surprise.
we're trying to balance two things, aren't we? And we're giving two specifications to the staff,
Yeah,
bless them,
yeah.
and it looks to me like we can't achieve both. We can't achieve a potential percentage, minimum, maximum percentage increase in tax, in preset, versus the fact that we want to restore, keep our general reserves at a certain level of 6 months. So therefore, it looks to me like the two are not going to be possible together.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then we need to be told, and we need to be told what the recommendations are in terms of you're going to, if you don't, you're going to have to choose one or the other, and these are the two options.
No, but I think on the previous budget we were given, we were on that, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were moving towards the 6 months. I
Okay.
think significantly we'd gone, halfway between on the 4.9% without adding these extra grant requests.
Well, but that's the point, isn't
Yes.
it? We've now
But
got a
we
new
did-
budget in front of us that's
Yeah.
suddenly upended
No, well, I
everything
think
that
we-
we've been working towards.
We did have a look. We did initially. Kate did provide us with different scenarios,
Yeah.
and the percentage decrease would be required to achieve each of those different scenarios for looking at different levels of increase, replenishment of the reserves. I'll be honest. I don't quite know how we've ended up where we are.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I think we have to accept the fact. I think first of all, we have to make a decision. We know where our reserves need to be. We need to decide realistically, can we achieve that? Is that achievable in 1 year? Or are we looking at a longer time period to get our reserves to the level we want? Are we looking at a 2-year period or even a 3-year period to achieve that? Secondly, there's a risk, isn't there, because we've still got, there's still some unknowns across the road, which is the whole reason we're into the issue with the reserves. And there's no guarantee that something over there isn't going to further hit our reserves. So perhaps maybe we have to have two cost options that we take back to full council to say, this is the budget. Here's the alternative, which will give you an additional safety net of an increase to your reserves, and let full council decide which of those two models they like.
Well, I think we had that previously, and I think this one has sort of confused things.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that this extra spending is dependent on more clarification or a more positive.
Yeah, I think we were hoping that the predicted outturns might have varied, so the extra costs from the trusts could be accommodated. And by because we changed some of the bits and pieces about the
So I think it
staffing.
will come down to that decision. The one that we had previously, that we'd taken to council, which was, sort of that 4.9%, maintained most of the costs we got, not really increased anything very much above inflation, and raising and the level of reserve was increasing in the direction we wanted to do. This one then is a significant increase in preset, but I think it's hoped that increased cost is covered by the money that we find there. But if it is, that will be the decision, I think.
Yeah.
Do we go with that safer one, that more certainty of continuing business as it was last year, or do we go with the, and I think the feeling.
I need to give you 3 options, don't I?
Yeah.
I need to give you what you get 5%. Yeah. I can give you what's 5%. What 6 months is, and if that means we have to put another line that's £50,000, okay, and that bumps up, I'm just guessing here, to 20%. There's a middle ground somewhere, isn't there? Yeah, and there's a middle one and go, well, we'll have 4 months, yeah, and you might trim off the 2. So I think there's 3 options that you need to be provided with.
Can I just ask some clarification? So this budget represents the same as the last one we had, where we had 6 months and 4.9%. Right? Apart from the fact that we've now added in those extra things, right, which has now pushed it up to 8%, but at 3 to 4 months general reserves.
Yeah.
Right? So therefore, what we've got to do then is understand, what I'd like to understand is, right, okay, so no, that's actually clear. So what we've done, we've added in the extra, and then that's thrown everything out. If we don't add in the extra, we're back to where we were, which is 4.9% and 6 months.
Almost.
So that's our first
Moving
option.
So the 6 months wasn't in the full.
No, we're moving towards it, but we're not. We're
Yeah.
nearer that.
So
than
that
we
was,
are
but
to
the point was, is that the last stuff
Yeah.
we looked at,
Yeah.
that was our first option.
Yeah.
That should still be the option that
Yeah.
goes to council.
Yeah,
The second option is putting that extra in,
yeah,
and then if that is put in, that gives us two sub-options, if
Yeah.
you like. One is 3 to 4 months general reserves at 8%,
Yeah.
or 6 months reserve at 23%.
yes.
Am I
But
right
I'm
on
also,
that?
Yeah.
So
But then
so I'm also
I-
been told that our financial position might be more favourable in another
Yeah,
month's
yeah,
time,
but
so we may be able to not to fund this without putting the precept.
it's appreciated that, when you're doing a budget,
Yeah,
you try and forecast what your expenditure is going to be at the
Yeah.
end of the year, right? And sometimes it's not possible to do that. Sometimes you can actually get it quite accurate. Mine used to be quite accurate. But we've got a lot of things going on in this council, and it's not what I would call in terms of its expenditure, it's not a stable council in terms of expenditure. You don't know what's going to happen. So there will be times going forwards, and the longer we leave it, hence the
Yeah.
original where we started, shall we leave this until
Yeah.
the next finance meeting?
Yeah.
Because we'll get a better appreciation of what the level of expenditure and therefore what the potential reserves
Yeah.
might be at the end of the year,
Yeah.
which may mean therefore that we won't need to up the preset
Yes.
so much, or we can get more towards our
Yeah.
6 months. So I get that as well. Thank you. That's clear. It
All
would
right.
just be nice to have that in a
yeah.
little
Go
writing.
Right, I
I mean, I will do.
Well, I want to draw this to a conclusion really, because we are. So it's a good discussion. We're going, no, I'm not saying you've got to stop. I'm saying I don't want anyone else
we
to
should
get.
get too hung up with the 4.9%. To me, that seems like a number that's come from.
Okay.
I don't think we should get too hung up on the 6 months reserves,
Right.
because again, that's largely plucked out.
Okay.
When we talk about uncertainty of expenditure, well, there's more certainty than you think. One of the things is we know that there are a lot of issues with Summer Centre. There's potential issues with the Town Hall, unknowns, and we're saying our reserves are a little bit low. To me, it makes sense to put a bit more provision in for some of these expenses into some form of EMR to go on these projects, and if they aren't needed, then it'll top up the reserves a little bit in the end. But we know we've got some building work coming up, we know we've got some maintenance, and we know we've got some uncertainty with the Town Hall. So to me it makes sense to put some money aside for it, knowing it's likely to be used, but if it's not, it'll top up the reserves, which everyone says are low.
Yeah.
So there is more certainty than we think, and I don't think there's enough provision in the budget as it is for some of these costs which we know are coming up.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Well, I believe so.
Can I
Believe
just
that
then
the
ask,
cost-
where's the 75 grand? What's the 75 grand for then that's in there?
70.
75 grand for the town
Yeah.
hall refurbishment.
That's the retention. So
That's the
Okay,
retention.
so that's
fund.
all through the other stuff.
So we get a bill each month from them, and we retain 5% of it. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
So basically, we're accruing that cost into next year.
No, that's fine,
Yeah.
that's fine.
But
Okay.
although we put 70,000 in the budget, sorry, excuse me, 75,000 in the budget, which is the retention fees which need to go in there, it doesn't get paid. Half of it gets paid 2 or 3 months after completion. The other half gets paid 12 months after
Yeah, we
completion.
talked about that.
So it might, some of it we might need to go into next year's.
Okay. So I think we've got the clerks have got some feedback, and so that we hope to get something from them. So I'd
Well, I'd
like
be
to
more
sort of.
controversial then,
Oh,
because we put
okay, sorry,
£10,000 into the new playground equipment, haven't we?
Yeah.
So we've actually made provision for some capital expenditure for £10,000 to new playground equipment. So the option exists to say that's the £10,000 and it's put into a line item, and it's not necessarily earmarked for playground equipment, it's earmarked for some repairs and maintenance of whatever the
Well, that can be
council determines, and then you don't need to start eking
So we
into-
don't need to specify.
So,
it.
so instead of having
Yeah.
£10,000 in CPU playground equipment, that £10,000 goes somewhere else, and the council can then decide how it wants to allocate that 10,000,
Just CP.
just into a capital equipment.
That 10,000 has been taken out.
But it's still in this one. So
Have
the
I-
one you sent out.
Oh, have I just deleted it by mistake?
Right. So I'm going to
I've
throw this
been
discussion
playing-
to
Final
one
question.
final thing
Playing with
from.
figures, so
Gordon.
mine's probably
Okay.
messed up.
Not a contentious question, it's
All
a
right.
question of how we go about these things. Say I decide that I personally think that the council should put more aside for capital projects next year. Right?
Yeah.
How would the council make that decision if the council agreed with me? Because this is also just a talking shop in the committee. Is that something that should be raised at full council and say this budget should make additional provision for capital projects next year? Or is it something that can be
Okay,
discussed?
so I look at it this way. Okay,
Yeah.
I will give you probably 3 options. Yeah,
Mhm.
the 2 options are on the table, which
Yeah.
Scott's right, the middle ground.
Yeah.
Okay, there'll be some variations of that. So I could say, actually, the £10,000 that you've got from for the playground currently, yeah, you could use the £30,000 earmark, so it's not a pressure on the precept. So though you budget, you're not precepting it for because you're using the SIL money, which reduces your commitment on the precept by £10,000, which is what 2%, isn't it? Yeah, in rough terms. Yeah. I'll just check up. Yes. So, and then you want to understand about what your general reserve is. Okay. Now our general reserve, okay, and I told you before, we come up with a figure, 214,000 last time. But it might be as low as 150, it might be as high as 300. Don't get fixated about a precise number. It's about a rough order of magnitude. Okay. Yeah? And then you can then decide, yeah, that actually you don't quite need that. It's about the risk. Yeah? So we've got £214,000, we said last. I'm going to come down to know what it is now. Kate, okay? Okay. So I'm pretty comfortable it's going to be 150. With a fair wind, it might be 300. Yeah? But so I go, if it's 150, what risks are on the horizon to the town council we don't know right now? And it might be town hall. Yeah? It might be 7%. And you might say, well, actually, £150,000, we're thinking about 40,000, that's probably enough to cover it. Yeah? So that's a risk judgment. Or you say, no, it's not enough to cover it, it's only enough to cover it if the general reserve is at £300,000. So it becomes a risk call about what level the general reserve is. And as Councillor Scott said there, in a council where you've got some very certain costs, very predictive costs, you can be more certain about the risk.
Okay, so to answer the question, you're saying basically that you would try and have enough reserves to cover some of these costs if they are necessary, but should the reserves be a bit lower expected, then which we might do.
But there's nothing stopping the council. I've presented those 3 budgets, and some of the councillors saying, I propose that we allocate 2 million to the Mickey Mouse Memorial Fund, and if the councillors say, yeah, we'll go for it, then there's nothing stopping the council doing that, because that's part of this section. I'm using a completely ridiculous thing just to make the point. Yeah? So there's 3 budgets, and somebody say, I propose budget B, the middle ground, but I want to add this one line, which has been amended to it, gets a vote. Yeah? But what you want to avoid clearly is going through, and then somebody saying, well, I'll change that line, I'll change that line, I'll change that line, I'll change that line.
Yes, it
Okay?
needs to be
Which is
done.
unhelpful because you then lose track of the numbers in the meeting.
Yes, and we ended up in a situation a couple of years ago where it was too late to get the numbers down. Right, thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like to expand it a little bit.
So is this coming to the next F&O then?
It is.
Oh, I lost track of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Of course, yeah, we'll update council at the next full council meeting about.
Yeah, and I'll write a summary sheet from the RFOs about the recommendations to vote. Okay? What I'll present to you, I think, is not a line by line thing. I'll do it by cost centre. Yeah? Okay, so it's 20 cost centres, not 70 lines, because you know what the component parts of the community are stuff is.
That helps.
Yeah?
That will go in
So you have
Okay,
15 lines.
Thank you very much, Lee. Okay. Thank you for that long and fruitful discussion. Item number 8, date of the next meeting, and that will be 7 o'clock on Monday, the 20th of January 2025. Here, as usual. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming tonight.
Well,
Happy Christmas.